Hi, my name is David Foley. I'm CEO at Status Pro, and I'd like to say a few things about the SPIoT project. Maybe first of all, the background. Effectively, three technologies have made SPIoT possible. The first one is NB-IoT. NB-IoT stands for Narrowband IoT, which basically means it makes it possible for us to have little sensors which are participants in the internet, and therefore they can send data or messages through the telephone network to a server. The second issue, I guess it's started with nanotechnology, which made it possible to make tiny little low power and also relatively low cost sensors for a whole variety of physical characteristics like temperature, humidity, pressure, acceleration, and a bunch of other things. And the third thing is the container technology in the IT world, which probably originally was developed by, originally developed by Google, which makes it possible for individualized internet sites. It's totally different whether you have a static site which is the same for everybody, or whether when you log into a site you get to see your data and nobody else does. Okay, let's continue now with where we are so far. What have we done for the electromechanical workshop people, and what have we done for the environmental monitoring? So I'll start with the electromechanical workshops. As I said, what they wanted is a sensor. They want to screw the sensor onto the motor, and they want to deliver it to the customer and want to get data without any installation or any IT cost to the customer. So we made a sensor here. That's what it looks like. And that measures acceleration and velocity in 3 axes, and it also measures the plate temperature. The purpose of this thing is not to do any kind of deep diagnostic measurements or to tell us, give us any exact data on bearing conditions. This is simply, that's what they wanted. They wanted to call it an early warning system, to keep an eye on the motor and answer the simple question, is it getting hot and does it vibrate a lot or not? That's the only question to be answered, and that at minimum cost. So how does it work? I'm in my workshop, I've finished a repair, I mount this on the motor and I deliver it to the customer, and I turn it on or the customer turns it on, and then it goes through the telephone net, delivers data back to the server, and I can give, I'm the electromechanical workshop now, I can give my customer access to this data, or I do that for him as a service. Should the motor then get too warm or vibrate more than expected or more than it did before, then I call the customer and say, listen Joe, should I go over and do some serious measurements on this? This was the basic idea, what they wanted to have. In the following video, you're going to see the installation of the MM100, that's the motor monitoring sensor. And I guess for those of you who, like me, have spent a few decades in condition monitoring, you're going to ask yourself a couple of questions. You're going to say, why is this thing mounted on the fin? Why isn't it in a proper place in the bearing load zone? How is this supposed to do any proper diagnosis? Well, this is exactly the point. It's not for diagnosis. This is not an alternative to condition monitoring, classical condition monitoring. This is perhaps an addition. This is a prerequisite, perhaps. This is something you might do before you do condition monitoring. The purpose of this sensor is simply to answer the question, does the machine vibrate a lot or not? And is it getting hot? That's it. So the reason we mount it on the fin is because it's a rapid and easy place to mount it, and we get the acceleration velocity in a rough sense in all 3 dimensions. Check out the video. Okay, let's have a look at the platform. And to do that, we'll take a case. Let's imagine you run an electromechanical workshop. That means your business is the repair and maintenance of motors and pumps. And let's imagine you are using SPIoT sensors. So I'll say what has happened then. You have bought SPIoT sensors. They have been supplied to you, and you have also received access to the SPIoT platform, password and user and that kind of stuff. And let's imagine you have half a dozen customers, and you have spoken to these customers, and they have agreed that you keep an eye on some of their assets. So you have, after the repair, installed a sensor on each relevant motor, pump, and that has been returned to the customer, and they were turned on, so they have started to collect data, and according to your schedules they are measuring data and returning the data to the platform. Now we look inside the platform as you've entered your access code, and what you see. You see SPIoT on the top, monitoring on the bottom, you see sensor boxes. The sensor boxes here is simply a list of all your sensors and what are their states. You can go in and have a look at here on this level and see what have the boxes measured and how are they configured, etc. We can go in and have a look at one. I go in there and I see now 3 states: critical, attention, nominal. I don't think that has to be explained. Typically, very few of your sensors are in critical and most of them are in nominal. And if you want to know why a sensor is critical, you go and have a look at that, choose the sensor, go into it and choose measured data. And then you see the measured data associated with that sensor, and you see the reason why that's gone critical. Now, that's perceived from a sensor point of view. That's really maybe not so interesting. We are more interested in the notion of assets. So if I go back to the original screen here, I see above the sensor boxes, I see assets. So what do we mean by that? What we mean with assets is the asset, in fact, is the motor. And what kind of attributes does an asset have? An asset has an owner, that's one of your customers. Maybe you have documentation about it, maybe you have some photos about where it is, it has a location, contact persons, and of course the sensor that you have connected to that motor. And what you really want to know is not in what state are your sensors, but in what state is the asset. Therefore, the asset has alarm levels. An asset can have more than one sensor. And that's actually your business, is to have a look in the morning and say, of all the assets that I'm keeping my eye on, do any of them require, or in any kind of a critical state, or they require my attention in some way? This would then mean I would arrange something. I would speak to the customer, or I would send one of my guys in to do some diagnostics. And that effectively is the purpose for the electromechanical workshops, the purpose of this SPIoT thing. I have installed sensors on my customer's assets, and I keep an eye on them for him. Now, of course, your customer might want to see that data. So now we get into the issue of course, all this data here for all these various assets is not all just pitched into a single database. That's when we go up and we see, and we connect or click on monitoring. We see then I have a list of my customers and what is specifically the state of the assets at each one of these customers. Of course, as I said before, each customer only has access to his own data from his own assets, and other customers don't have that. But if you, as an electromechanical workshop, you want to be able to jump in, you want to see an overview of all your the assets that you manage, and you want to jump in and see the customer view as well. And that's what you do here from a monitoring point of view. I choose a particular customer and I click on that, and now I am right in there as if I were my customer, and I can have a look at his assets as he would see them. There are many other aspects here, like how do I determine when measurements should take place, when should data be sent. There are lots of maintenance things like setting up connection profiles. I don't want to go into that. I want to focus on the value and the use. The use is I'm keeping an eye on my sensors, on my customers' assets, and I can do that without installation and without any IT. I simply need the sensors which I bought and the access to the internet. That's the purpose of the thing. Hi, I hope you've got an overview now of what this SPIoT idea is and at what stage we're currently at. To whom would we like to speak? We would of course like to speak to customers for whom this would be interesting, be it electromechanical workshops or people who have other monitoring interests. But it's new territory for us, so we would also be interested to speak to people who may want to use our platform. If they have sensors that speak MQTT, our platform could be used for that. This is the phase where we want to speak to you. So I hope you enjoyed that and looking forward to hear from you. Good luck.